Right, ladies and gentlemen, do take your seats and we'll get back to our discussions. We're developing a new theme now. We're focusing on the future of Arctic business. We, in the last session, spent a lot of time talking about governments, about multilateral organizations, about regulatory frameworks, and we talked obviously about the oceans. This time we're going to continue with our theme of the economic potential in both ocean and on land in the Arctic, but we're going to focus particularly on business, the money-making enterprises, the job creators. And of course, there is huge potential in the Arctic, but there are also massive challenges, and there are concerns about the way in which the expansion of the Arctic economy is handled. And we're going to explore both the opportunities and the challenges for the next hour or so. It's the same format, so we have keynote speakers. We then, after they've done their opening remarks, we gather them all in the seated area for a panel discussion where you guys get to ask many of the questions yourselves. So my job right now is to introduce our keynotes for this session. So let us begin by inviting up to the stage the president of the Arctic Economic Council, Heidar Gudjonsson. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator, Your Excellencies, friends of the Arctic. I was going to open up and say how happy I am to be here, but to tell you the truth, I'm a little bit unsure about how happy I am. The reason is when I was flying out from Iceland yesterday morning, there were earthquakes all around the airport. So as it happens, there is an active volcano 15 kilometers away from Keflavik Airport, which might be erupting over the next few days. So that could probably mean I would be stuck here for a while, and then I would need to sail back in the spring when the oceans are less challenging for me. I get seasick very easily. But this brings me also to the point that I want to make here, which is sort of transport and the importance of transport in the Arctic. Of course, internationally, transport is the foundation of business. We cannot move goods, we cannot move services without transport. It's absolutely essential. So if we look towards back to my home country, Iceland, and the airport that I was referring to earlier, where did that infrastructure come from? It was actually built by our friends of the US. They built it during the Cold War. But it has meant that we have been able to diversify our economy. The army presence completely went away in 2006. And since then, tourism in Iceland has five-folded. We now have more than 2 million tourists coming every year to a population of roughly 350,000. And this is sort of an example of infrastructure that's built, but then is getting used for other means. If we look towards Arctic opportunities, many of them are stranded, and in a sense stranded that they're outside this international network of transport. So the challenge is getting them online, so to speak. And how do we do that? Well, it's by big investments in infrastructure, and infrastructure of various sorts. It's not that we're just going to transform the Arctic. The Arctic has been home to millions of people for millennia. And these are very proud cultures with very important heritage that we need to make sure can sustain. But what sustains a thriving culture? As I tend to say, it's sort of, and we believe at the Arctic Economic Council, it's sustainable economic development. So when we look at the Arctic as a whole, there is no other area in the world which can boast of a better track record in being sustainable in their economic development, being responsible in their economic development. So as we look towards the future, there are various interesting industries that will be coming in. over the next few years, because when we build the necessary infrastructure, when we have connected the Arctic with the international world, there are numerous opportunities that arise. For instance, in Iceland, we used to have 75% of the total exports of our nation was just cod fish alone. Now cod makes less than 10% of our total exports. Tourism is the biggest. Fisheries as a total are probably around 20%. But there are other important industries which have grown out of the fishing industry. For instance, we have a big industry growing around the medicine industry and also in sort of food supplements and other areas, which are now increasing diversification in our area, creating very interesting jobs for both genders and making the country a much more interesting place to live in and grow a family in. So with that, I just wanted to thank you, and I look forward to the discussions later on. Thank you.